Rule of engagement.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a really challenging source. It's titled Black Solidarity, A Call to Introspection.
That's right. And it asks us a pretty pointed question. Why should Black Americans fight for Latino, Asian, or Indian immigrants? It really challenges conventional ideas.
Exactly. And just to be clear up front, our goal here isn't to endorse this view, but, to unpack its arguments impartially.
Right. Just understand the perspective it's offering on these intergroup dynamics. It's definitely a perspective that gives you pause.
Okay, so let's dive into the core argument, this idea of self-interest driving solidarity. How does the source lay that out?
Well, it's pretty direct. It argues that fighting for other racial groups, that should be a personal choice for Black individuals. Because it claims groups like Latinos and Asians haven't really shown support back to Black people. It even says they often treat Black people poorly, sometimes even in their own home countries.
So it reframes solidarity then, not as a moral thing, but more strategic, based on what you get back.
Exactly. It's about perceived history, reciprocity, or the lack thereof, according to this source.
Okay, and building on that, it brings in history. What does it say about, historical sacrifices?
Yes. The text claims Black people made the ultimate sacrifice, that they died for the freedom Latinos and Asians are enjoying today in America.
So the argument is that Black struggles made the U.S. safer, more welcoming for these groups when they arrived.
That's essentially the narrative presented, a sort of historical debt that it claims hasn't been acknowledged or repaid.
And the source gets even more pointed when it talks about animosity, right?
Right.
What are the specific claims there?
Yeah, this is pretty strong stuff. A key claim is that Latinos and Asians actually hate Black people more than any white person could.
Wow. And that any outreach is just transactional.
Purely transactional, yes.
Yeah.
The text says they only call for Blacks when it benefits them. It paints a picture of, very fragile alliances based purely on opportunism.
Does it give concrete examples to, back this up?
It does list some specific points. For instance, it claims these groups are against reparations for Black Americans, and that they don't care when Black people get killed by the police. It also mentions social things, like they don't like when their children date Black people. And maybe the most extreme claim is that they secretly wish they could join the whites and be the oppressor themselves.
That's quite an assertion. The source then moves towards this really controversial point about deportation laws, doesn't it?
It does. It directly addresses potential mass deportations, say, under someone like Trump.
And the argument is?
The source states Black people cannot be deported from America, framing them as fundamentally American, even more American than any whites.
Okay, I follow the premise, but where does it go from there?
Well, it then suggests Black people should support illegal Latino and Asians mass deportation.
To what end?
The logic offered is interesting. It's to reduce the number of groups perceived as adversaries. The idea is, if these groups are gone, it simplifies things, leaving only the white supremacist as the main enemy to confront.
So a strategy of elimination, essentially. How does the piece wrap all this up? What's the final word?
It concludes with a really stark warning. It says, and I'm quoting roughly here, "You have no friends, Black people. Let the Latinos and the Asians die for themselves. Do not be used once again by people who hate you."
Wow. So a call for complete isolation based on this view of self-interest and perceived hostility.
Pretty much. A very insular perspective on group dynamics and survival.
Okay. So we've tried to just lay out the specific and definitely challenging arguments from the source today, giving you that particular viewpoint to consider.
And maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Based on what we've just unpacked from this source, what happens to a diverse society if solidarity becomes purely transactional?
Yeah, and what does it really mean for any group to define its friends and enemies so sharply in that kind of environment? Something to think about.